Samuel Dreyfus, good to have you here, mate.
Thank you very much for having me.
Mate, it's a pleasure. I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you is, you're a psychologist. You have conversations of real depth and real meaning every day. I know that you'd be having a lot of conversations right now about nervous systems being dysregulated. It seems to be a hot topic. I think we're all more connected to our outer worlds than we are our inner worlds at the moment, and that's a real challenge. Can you explain to me what it actually means to have a dysregulated nervous system?
Yeah, so firstly, just an amendment. I'm a provisional psychologist, which just means that I'm done 8 years of training. I'll be fully registered in February. And then what's called I have to actually let you know that, because I can't call myself a psychologist unless I'm fully registered legally. So in February, I'll be a generally registered psychologist, and then what's called a clinical registrar, which is like the clinical part of the program. But dysregulated nervous system, look, I think there's so many different elements to it, but I suppose dysregulation occurs at two ends of you think of it like a band, think of like a bandwidth, and you have like a bandwidth of tolerance. Say at one end you have like mania or hypermania, like a manic episode, and at the bottom end you have depression. And there's obviously other emotions that play into the mix, but a dysregulated nervous system is when like the signals that coming up for us are probably exacerbated or numbed, depending on what end of the spectrum you are. So if you take something like bipolar, depression is unipolar, one pole, which is just down, and then bipolar is both. So you have the highs and the lows. And a dysregulated nervous system is when the things that we feel that are probably should not necessarily put us in a state of like fight or flight or fear, feel like, a sense of ourselves or like an integral part of us is being threatened. And I think nervous system dysregulation comes from, a lot of the time it comes from early childhood experiences or attachment issues or kind of schemas or like experiences in which have formed our perception of the world. And the more that we choose to turn a blind eye to why our nervous system is dysregulated, the more it kind of controls us. So Jung had this idea that was until you make the unconscious conscious, it will command your every move, and you will call it fate. And that's because you don't necessarily know why. When your partner says something to you like, "Why the hell didn't you clean the dishes yesterday and left them in the sink?" and you immediately just go to 100 and see red, you're not really talking to 33-year-old Sam. You're really talking to the young kid who used to get scolded for minor things and had no outlet to vent his frustrations when he was a child. And anytime you feel, I think this is really appropriate for men at the moment too, like one of the videos that kind of blew up was talking about how like the worst time to bring up your frustrations is immediately after your partner has brought up theirs. But we want to get defensive, and I think the nervous system is a long way to talk about nervous system dysregulation, but whenever we feel ourselves being like gripped or hooked by an emotional response, without being cognitively aware of why first, it's something that sits within us that needs to be addressed and looked at.
Mate, I love that answer. You're allowed to have long answers all day,
Cool.
by the way. I want to ask you what symptoms you would feel if you were in that state. And I know it can be different depending on what end of the band you're on, right? But I think anxiety, that word, is something that comes up a lot at the moment.
Yeah.
And I've had a little bit of health anxiety at the moment about a few different things that I'm trying to get answers on. And for the first time in my life, I feel somewhat out of control of my emotional state towards my health. As someone who's experienced a lot of health challenges, for the first time, I feel like I can't get a grip of it. And I'm having all these symptoms, and I think a lot of these symptoms are exacerbated by this cluelessness, this consistent need for answers, and being puzzled by why I can't find them or why I can't reach them. And so I feel even today, and this is me being very honest with you now, over the course of the last couple of days, I felt like I'm in a bit of a fog where I feel like I'm not articulating as clearly, I'm not as present as I normally am. And so that word anxiety comes to mind, and I think, how much of this is an anxiety that I'm feeling?
Well, there's kind of two. I don't know a lot about your health situation. Can you elaborate a little bit more about your?
So I have the the long story is I have cystic fibrosis, liver disease, diabetes, and portal hypertension.
Right.
But I've lived with those things for most of my life, CF my whole life, the other things diagnosed along the way. And I've always had a very good perspective towards those things. But about 2 months ago, thought I was having a heart attack at home. Heart attack symptoms, ended up in emergency. And symptoms that have stayed with me on and off over the course of the last 2 months and resulted in me thinking I was having another heart attack on Friday and ended up in emergency. Tightness in my chest that ran down my arms to my fingertips. A tightness in the jaw, like Mike Tyson had just gone 12 rounds on me.
Yeah, all right.
And what has been ruled out as a cardiac incident.
It was when you went to the hospital.
Yeah, it was
twice.
ruled out.
Right.
But there's some testing going on for my heart to see if it's something else heart related. But another part, like there's this need for answers because these symptoms are scary. And I guess I feel like I'm giving you this in a bunch of different ways. But the thing that I think is giving me the most anxiety about it is I feel very lucky that I have the most amazing wife that I love.
Yeah.
We just come home from beautiful wedding and honeymoon in Europe with our family and had the best time. And I feel like we have our whole lives ahead of us and I'm very excited for that life. And so in one breath, I feel like I have everything to gain. And in the other, I feel like I have everything to lose. And so that lack of certainty for the first time in my life, considering all of my health challenges, is really troubling me.
It's consuming.
And so I'm like, how much of this is an anxiety about what I can't seem to answer right now?
Yeah, man. You're asking the real questions.
Yeah.
There's nothing humans hate more than uncertainty. That's where the big dark monster develops and sits. It's what's under the bed at night. It's what's in the cupboard when we see a shadow of a hat on a coat rack. And we avoid and we shy away until we realize that we turn the light on and it's a hat on a coat rack. But until we shine a light on and get answers, which is what you're looking for, the number of possible scenarios is overwhelming. And that's where our brain goes.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So anxiety sits, there's kind of two things you need to know about anxiety, that are the kind of core tenets of anxiety. And the first one is, or any anxiety disorder, is that the initial cognition is that I know something bad is going to happen. And the second one is when that thing happens, I won't be able to deal with it. So then we get stuck in this loop that's like, I have this thought and I feel that the thought is making me feel negatively in my body. And what you're describing is kind of similar to a panic attack. This is how panic attacks work. Not that I'm giving you medical advice anyway. But what happens with someone that has experiences of panic attack is they go out and they have a panic attack for one reason or another in a public space. And then they realize that, gosh, the fear of having a panic attack in a public space is actually really embarrassing. Like I could fall down in a public space in the shopping center. I'm at Harris Farm. And not only do I fall and have a panic attack, heart attack, because it feels like that, my pants are going to fall down in the process and I'm going to shit myself. And then everyone's going to look at me pointing and no one's going to help and I'm going to die in a public space and it's going to be so embarrassing. And that kind of unrealistic thinking that just gets on this treadmill of imagine how bad it could be if that type of thing happened. You get this kind of runaway train of like ruminative negative thoughts. And that cycle leaves us feeling, which is health anxiety is the same thing. It's like, how much information do I need for comfort and clarity that I'm okay? And the thing is, there are an endless number of medical examples that could give you answers that you would or wouldn't want. It's unlikely any of them. You've had a doctor tell you that the heart is okay, and you've had an experience of that. Yeah. What else is there, right? So, like multiple professionals, I'm sure. So, when it comes to kind of worry and negative thoughts, you have these thoughts, and then we feel uncomfortable in our body, and then we feel uncomfortable in our body. We do. Well, I need to relieve this sense of distress or fear or impending doom. Arms are tingling, my heart's racing, like something's going on, and then we do something like, I want to relieve the distress, and in health anxiety, it's usually answers. I'm going to go on a binge of just reading medical information about my thing. And we do all this kind of work, this cognitive, this mental load of like more information. Oh, okay, I've got some answers, and there's relief. So the reason why worry works when people worry is because it makes us feel like we're doing something.
Interesting.
So we worry about something and it goes like, we're not actually solving any problems. Problem solving is like it's a tool that we teach people for realistic problems. I'll talk about this in a second. What happens with worry is we've got a thought and we worry and we think and we worry and we think and we worry and we think. And, you know, like the drawing I do in sessions with people is like I get a whiteboard marker and I just like stick it on the thing and I just draw this like crazy like spiral. And it's like, this is just your anxiety. It's like, I'm going to go to school and people are going to laugh at me and it's going to be really terrible and everyone's going to make fun of me because my socks are different colors and then I'm not going to have any friends. And then the next time I go to school, everyone's going to bully me and I'm going to be sitting alone and I'm going to hate myself and I'm going to come home. Like social anxiety. And that's the cycle of thoughts in the head. And then we feel uncomfortable in our body, right? But we're not actually getting anywhere. We're not testing anything. Unfortunately, with health anxiety, you can't really test beyond the fact that there are some things that you will not be able to know with certainty. And with anxiety, you kind of have two types of thoughts. You have realistic worry and you have unrealistic worry. Realistic worry is like, I have health complications. It is important for me to seek medical advice and problem solve in a way where I can either gain more answers or some clarity over my situation and then mitigate symptoms or, you know, live a more healthy and fulfilling life in light of the information that I have. So that's kind of, we close the loop on that problem. But with unrealistic worry, it's like, I'm having pains in my chest and my doctor is wrong and I'm going to go find another doctor. And then that doctor, he didn't give me the answer that I wanted. So I'm going to go to the next person. That doctor, I had a look at his background. He wasn't really as good as the other guy. So I'm going to go to this guy then. And I'm going to go to Dr. Google. And then Dr. Google tells me that it could actually be these other things. I'm going to take it back to the doctor and say, I think you got it wrong. And then we realize we're not really closing the loop on all of this thing. And the one thing that anxiety disorders all have, he's smiling like you know this cycle, right? We all know this cycle.
Yeah.
The thing that all anxiety disorders have in common, whether it's social anxiety or selective mutism, which is like when kids only speak to their parents, or general anxiety disorder, or specific phobias like blood injury or needles or anything like that, is avoidance. And from 7 years of psychological research, the thing that we know to work the most is exposure. So like the health anxiety is the constant Googling feels like we're solving problems. We're avoiding the discomfort of things could be bad. So I'm going to distract myself with as many Google searches and, doctors' experiences as possible. And you can be anxious. We all experience anxiety. The problem really is, when does it impede your life?
Yeah, I smiled through all of that because it really struck a chord. The thing that I guess has troubled me the most, and I've turned this into my personal psychology session.
Not medical advice. Anyone looking? We're talking around the issue.
The thing that's troubled me the most is it feels out of character, and so if I think back to myself, even just a couple months ago, different perspective of health. A couple years ago, I was running marathons with bleeding lungs. So I'm not typically what you would identify as like a hypochondriac. But something about this has changed it. So this morning I'm driving here. I can feel myself a little bit anxious. And I'm talking myself through, and you know who you are. I'm trying to get back to that root of who I know I am and how I usually deal with something like this. And it's a process,
Well, of course, you have new information. You're not the same person as you were before. This is the same. This is the same. When people are plunged into a chaotic state because of new information, like take any experience where new information is about your partner, about your wife, about your you get medical knowledge. The overlap, or like the Venn diagrams of who you are in the world and who you are in the world and who you thought you were in the world, and all of a sudden you get a cancer diagnosis, they don't overlap anymore. So like, you think you're this person, I know myself really well, and how I'm acting in the world are congruent. This is like a humanistic approach where we want to make the internal world match the external world, and that's called congruence. And you said something really interesting, which is like, I'm not acting in a way that is kind of congruent with who I want to be. So the first thing that I would ask you is like, what would it mean to live a more congruent life?
To be okay with not needing to know all the answers. To be a little bit more comfortable with the uncertainty. because I feel like I'm only robbing myself of the piece of the things that I want to hold on to.
So by worrying about the worrying and the outcomes and the uncertainty, we're missing the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
And I found myself clinging to moments in recognition of that. Like wanting to, when I'm sitting in bed at night next to my wife, wanting to put my phone down and like really look at her and be present and talk and go for a walk with a coffee and just be more present in all of those things I sometimes take for granted as routines of life. You know, that is the beauty of recognizing fragility. It's so funny. We just spoke off camera about how I've just written a whole book about this. But it's something that still eludes my grip.
What else do you have to do but be hyper aware in those moments? You know, the fact that you are aware in moments when you aren't, or you're being pulled away from more important moments, if you allowed yourself to reflect, is that's the cornerstone of enlightenment, right? It's like, where are you now?
You said something really beautiful that I think would be an incredible quote to insert right here. You said, if you want to know yourself, you have to trust yourself as the vessel for answers. Yeah. That connection to self. In a noisy world, a world that seems to, whether it be anxieties, like we've just discussed, the current social, cultural, political landscape, and a news cycle that just seems to beat us down and keep us in this state of hyper-awareness and fear, I feel like we are so disconnected from ourselves in the modern world that we are longing for us, if that makes any sense.
It makes perfect sense.
Talk to me about that need to reconnect with ourselves. Has there been an experience for you in your own life in which you can identify that reconnection, that return to self?
Something I wish everybody knew is Jonathan Haidt's work. If you know Jonathan Haidt's work, he wrote The Coddling of the American Mind. And he talks about how in the early 2000s and late 1990s, we developed 24-hour news. And when we developed 24-hour news, we had to fill a 24-hour news cycle. And they realized really early on that if you give people happy stories from midday to midnight, they don't watch telly. And that's why social media is all outrage in the extremes. And the problem is we have an innate wiring to be hyper aware of of things that could harm us, negative emotion. We want to know. So why do you think like, I think it's like 70 or 80% of the all viewership of crime fiction, like, you know, true crime drama and podcasts is female, because they want to know how's he going to kill me? You know, like it's a worry. So like looping back, we have been fed this narrative that the most pertinent information in our life is external to us. And that's a part of a function of the culture that we live in, but it's also the yearning for answers that we don't trust ourselves to hold. And like I said, I think at the start when we were off, like all we want to do for the first half of our life is to fit in, you know, be accepted without asking, without being asked. So we do what other people do, and we watch what other people watch, and we wear our backpack off one shoulder, because how ridiculous would it be to wear a backpack off two shoulders like it's made to, you know, and we look at what shoes they wear. And I have a video about this that I've kind of scripted, which is like, I remember it's called The Trend Is Not Your Friend. Because I remember this experience when I was 12 or 13, and I remember like being white hot with rage, screaming into the face of my father that I needed this pair of shoes or I would be ostracized by the kids at school. And I don't know why it came to me. Like, I think I was just daydreaming in bed. I might have been a shower thought, and I thought, what a strange experience to feel like the entirety of your existence is wound up in what shoes you wear. But at 15, it's like, if you don't have a Labubu now, like you're an idiot. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
which is so wild. And the noise from the outside world, it makes us feel so insignificant. And the trends that we cling on to feel included, they never fulfill us, you know, and we know that. And finding self, you know, really the only way forward to find self is to trust that the answers within you are true. Because otherwise you're playing someone else's game.
I heard Mel Robbins say to Chris Williamson that the reason people don't know how to trust their intuition is because they haven't listened to it for so long.
Absolutely.
You know, I am really on the fence about the world that I sometimes exist in this podcast world, and I am doing my best to remind people that this is not me trying to be a self-help guru. It's me looking for answers, being curious, because I think at times in my life where I've had difficulties that I've been trying to solve, or things that I've been trying to overcome, or growth that I've recognized I needed to find in myself, I have searched externally for those answers. I think there is a reason why inherently there's something about, do you know Dry Creek Dwayne?
Love him.
The Wrangler?
Love him, cigar smoking cowboy.
Mate, there's something about a guy like that with a cowboy hat, a cigar in one hand, sitting on a ranch or by a fire that calls to us internally, because we go, that wisdom that doesn't come from a screen on a phone or an audio book or a podcast is some kind of inherent wisdom that I think I don't have. How does he have it? But he has it because he's connected to himself. He trusts himself. He's leaning into intuition.
And he's okay. I remember, I haven't watched a lot of his. I'm not a big YouTuber. It just, everyone, I don't really watch YouTube. But when I have watched his videos, he's not afraid to admit that he's wrong. And like you mentioned it, like what did Socrates say? Like an unexamined life is not worth living. But the reason that Socrates was, such a what so kind of birthed the scientific method was because he was like the what is it, his wisdom in that his wisdom is in that he admits he knows nothing. So he's curious about everything. And you can play devil's advocate in that way, like, but that's not what he was doing. He was kind of being like, well, if I knew nothing about this and I had no assumptions, how would I find truth? And to come into an experience with no, you said like you're doing this because you're curious. Like, it's the same reason why you've done, is it 300 episodes?
Yeah, close to.
Right. And like, it's the same reason why Rogan is the most powerful commentator of all time. I think he's become probably more opinionated as he's gone on, but because for the first like 1,000 episodes or whatever it was, like he just would start everything with like, I'm a big idiot. I just want to know. And everyone's like, I'm also a big idiot. I just want to know. Like, no one listens to the podcast for Rogan. Everyone listens to podcasts because of his access to the guests and how kind of entry level his questioning is. And yeah, this self is found. I mean, Dwayne's a great. I'm going to watch more of his stuff, and you put him in the back of my mind now. But like, we're so scared. So scared now to misstep and fail and take back our words. I also just want to mention something too before we go back to self. Is that Mel Robbins? Not a fan at all. She's done incredible things. She stole "Let Them" theory. Mel Robbins
I did hear something about this.
Yeah, from I believe a disabled single mother named Cassie. I'm going to get her name wrong. Cassie Robbins, which was originally a poem that she wrote and had kind of formulated around these things. And Mel Robbins being this like huge, I think she's a lawyer with no actual psychological experience or anything like this. And I might not be entirely accurate on this. I'm willing to change my mind, but I know that she stole it from an original poem and then copyrighted the "Let Them" and wrote the book and just made a mozza. And they made the podcast or whatever. But the original idea was from an individual, a female. And, these ideas are never new under the sun. There's nothing new under the sun, but
sure,
don't like that. And at every opportunity that it comes up when someone raises her name, like, great podcast, there's some really good things. Stole the biggest thing in her life off a disabled single mother. So
yeah, that's interesting.
You should be responsible for that. You should own that. But I think she shied away from it. Sorry, but you were saying the self.
That's very interesting. Yeah, the self. I find myself at the end of a year, right? Like we're recording this for people who are listening maybe further down the line. We're recording mid-December. I don't actually even know what the date is, to be honest. I'm in the swing of it,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
And I find myself getting to the end of a year, and I love the limbo between Christmas, New Year's, and that early part of Jan where it doesn't matter what day it is. I don't really know what date it is. I don't have anything that I'm meant to be doing, but I'm present with my family. I'm present with my people. And I feel this incredible pull to reconnect with myself, to let go of my desire for outcomes and be okay with my ambition being and my effort being the reward. I find like there's something about this time of the year where just inherently that desire to let go and reconnect with me, with my people, to take a minute, to be in the sun, to be in the ocean, because we're so lucky here on the East Coast. It's just, there's a huge pull within me towards all of those things that naturally I'm an ambitious person. So when I go back into the year and, the end of Jan, early Feb rolls around and I've got laser focus on a few goals or real ambitions that I want to achieve, and that's great. And I love the ambitious side of me, but I feel that I don't lose myself because I'm authentic, but I lose a little bit of that intuition. I lose a little bit of that wisdom that tells me to slow down, take a moment, smell the roses, look around. And I often ask myself the question at the end of one year, ahead of the beginning of the next. What if I lived like this for 12 months of the year? What if I just had a little bit more balance? And I know some people hate the idea of balance, but I think that a whole lot of life is about striving for balance in different areas. Learning to walk the line between ambition and appreciation. Learning to be detached, but also know how to attach your things to things that are healthy and good. I think that this time of the year, I feel that real need for reconnection. I don't know if you're the same.
Yeah, I mean, as someone that is, I wouldn't call myself type A, but I think other people would probably call me type. I think actually my whole clinical master's cohort is probably laughing when they hear this, that we're not type A, but everyone that gets into a clinical psychology master's is type A. You don't really get in there unless you're not. So I understand what you're saying. I feel the desire for it. Look, Seneca said, you ask what are the limits to a man's wealth. First, having what is essential, and second, having what is enough. And it's very easy to get caught up in the moreness, the bigness of life, but it's not real, and with someone with health complications like yours, like it's beautiful that you can reflect on those moments and be like, I'm drifting away, I'm drifting from things that are both meaningful and viscerally rich for me. It's all well and good to be ambitious. Like, the goal is to be ambitious. The goal is to have a never-ending series of goals. There's nothing worse than getting to the, they have like PhD depression when people finish a PhD after 5 years and they're like, what the hell do I do? Like, you've been like, yeah, we want another thing and another thing, which is great. It's how we should be. The goal should be to have a ceiling that is constantly moving, but there is a cost to every choice. And there is a sacrifice to be made for every decision. And the question is, are you willing to sacrifice the things that you are? And the balance, I think, at the end of the year, like, everyone loves that. No idea what day it is between Christmas and New Year's. Like, it's the best. It's such a, and it's like when COVID happened. Like, everyone I know bought an Xbox or a PlayStation. And I was like, we just wanted to play. We just wanted to be free, and it was guilt-free be a child time. Get up at 9 in the morning and like all the boys jump on at 9 a.m. to play Call of Duty for like 12 hours. I'm like, and we're getting paid. Like, it was so, and we were just kids again. We were just yearning for this, like, do a bit of work, but I think life is meant to be lived in sprints. You should work when you have something to work towards, and then you should rest when you finish and desire rest. But I think it's Nicholas Nassim Taleb said that's like, the two things that kill a man are like taxes and a monthly salary, which is that we just live for that, that's the stipend or the bank account addition that allows us to be free again. And the goal should be to live a life that is, meaningful moment to moment, busy when we need to be busy, communicating with our partner or your wife that we need to be busy when we need to be busy, and I'm not just neglecting or forgetting you. The self comes into this though, because you can rely on other people for guidance, but you have to rely on yourself for direction. So it's all well and good to ask for help along the way and listen to the Hormozy podcasts and the Chris Williamson and the Lex Friedmans and the Navals, right? But if the direction of your life is not being steered by you in a way that feels aligned, it doesn't matter what extra information you have, because you're not working on something that is intrinsically meaningful. And I think that is the curse of being privy to so many other people's lives. We're not meant to see the highlight reel of everybody's life all the time, because there's too many choices. And like, if I use this example with clients, like if I take you out of a helicopter and drop you in the middle of the desert and, sand 360 degrees, you're not anxious because you don't know which way to go. You're anxious because there are too many options and you don't want to make the wrong one, right? So if I go north, well, I can't go south, definitionally speaking. If I go east, I can't go west. And each one could be wrong. And that's paralysis. That's fight or flight, freeze for one, right? So what do we do with kids? We give them choice. You say you're having peas or broccoli, and then you get your ice cream. You can choose. You can go to the park, we can go to the movies, but you'd get one. I mean, we limit the choice. We force the choice. So now we have a world where we tell kids you could be anything. It's like, great. What do I do? Because if I want to be an astronaut, I can't be a firefighter. And if I want to be a firefighter, I can't be. And like this, that is obviously not true in its entirety. You can do many different things, but people are paralyzed by making the wrong choice. And I think the way that I have found, which has helped people the most, in that they learn to rely on themselves and their nervous system, like we talked about at the start, for guidance. Where is my attention going? Who do I look up to? Why do I watch their content? What is it about that person that I can't help but look at? Why do I watch? Why am I okay? Why can't I sit down and watch a movie, but I can watch a 4-hour lecture on the origins of philosophy? Like, that's bloody strange, isn't it? Like, for years we were sold the idea that Home and Away was the limit of 30 minutes of television that we could all understand the narrative arc of, and now you've got like 70 different plot lines in Game of Thrones or something like that, like complex interplays of multiple layers of analysis, and we're just hungry for that. And you need to rely on what enthuses you. This is my word of the year. It's enthusiasm. Because you can't lie about what you're enthusiastic about. For some reason, you're enthusiastic about talking to people, being curious, asking about their life stories, selling homes, watching people walk into their new home and be, just over the moon with the fact that they bought their own house. Like, that's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Why?
Let me ask you, why do you believe, in your clinical experience, that we are so paralyzed with the idea that the decision we make could be wrong?
Because as humans, we have an innate bias for negative outcomes. And like I tell everyone, we tell anxiety 101, anxiety is not a bad thing. If all of your ancestors who weren't anxious, they're dead. Because when the lion rustles in the bushes, if you go, dude, it's fine, it's probably just the wind, dead.
Yeah, I'm chill, man.
Right? Like, all the non-anxious ancestors, gone, right? So you need it. Gets you out of bed in the morning. Cortisol's high in the morning, adenosine high in the evening, the way, like, the circadian rhythm of these things. With that negativity bias, or that, you get comments, you get videos with 7,000, 8,000 comments. They're all incredibly heartwarming. They bring a tear to my eye when I'm sitting on the toilet in the morning. Like, it moves me like nothing else. And there's one dude in there that says, like, you wrote this on ChatGPT. And I'm like, I think about that for 30 days. Like, there's 7,000 positive comments and one dude thinks I'm ChatGPT, and I'm like, God damn it, fuck. Just eats at me, right? Like, for a period of time until I check myself. But like, because we're wired to detect threat, you know? And the problem here is that we assume that we can predict the outcome of a decision after it's been made. And that's wrong. So we think, I'm going to go and make this decision. I'm stuck in it forever. All these bad things could happen and it will determine the outcome of my life. And that's not real, because as soon as you open the first door and the first domino falls, every other door changes. So we make this assumption that I'm going to go move to, I'm talking to a friend this morning at the coffee shop. She's going to go to, wants to go to university in Western Australia. And she's like, I'm so worried about missing out my life here. You know, like, what if things change here and I've built so much of a life here, and like, no, I'm going to leave that and go to university. I'm like, right, but like, you're assuming that you're going to go to university in Western Australia, and shout out Molly when you watch this, you're assuming that you're going to go there and it's going to be just university. But what is likely to happen is you will go to university over there and you will sit next to someone in class and you will have a shared interest and you will start a band together. And then you meet a nice boy and then you kiss and you realize, oh my gosh, this man's the love of my life. And he says, I'm moving to France. And you go, I'm going to move to France with him. And then 6 months down the line, you're living in France or Paris or Spain or something, going on holidays you never imagined. And you realize, I was so worried about leaving Sydney. And that's because as soon as you trust your instincts to lead you in a direction that enthuses you, you begin to trust your own moral compass.
Jimmy Carr says life is what happens when you have other plans.
Yeah, he's great. He's so good.
Have you read his book?
No, I have not.
Unbelievable.
Really good?
Yeah.
I got asked the other week about like, what is the definition of success? And he says,
to enjoy the passage of time.
Yeah, to enjoy the passage of time. And the definition of wealth is when more money wouldn't change what you do. And dude, it brings a tear to my eye. I've won. Like,
that's a very good feeling.
Dude, if I had more money, I would just have a nicer office. You know, like, we would have really nice chairs with a window view.
Yeah.
But like, I couldn't imagine doing anything else with my life. And what more could you ask for?
I want to come back to that in a minute. Let's talk about this idea, or this recognition that we are flawed. I think that I was having this conversation with a guest the other day, and I was saying that I've come to the conclusion, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, that whilst it's important to want to work on yourself, to grow, to improve different areas of your life, not just yourself, I think that we have to be okay with being flawed and knowing that there are some things we will never truly solve. Some problems that we may always grapple with to some degree. Maybe we just get a little bit better at it. But I think this focus that, and I see it on socials, and it hurts my heart for people who are watching, that the person you're looking for in the next relationship doesn't have any red flags. They don't have any imperfections. They are perfect in every area of life, that you need to be perfect when you meet them, that you have to have fully worked on yourself and know yourself before you meet them. This idea that we are a finished product waiting to happen and we can't live our life until we get there, I just think is so troubling and confusing for people.
Yeah, well, we've been sold this picture perfect image, like everybody else is spotless.
Alana Baton,
oh my God,
from School of Life, just
best.
A brilliant man. I love his take on things because I think he's perfectly optimistic, but also very real.
Rational.
You know, very rational. I love his thought on complaining. You know, if you get rid of all complaining, you remove some of the joy of life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, because I'm like, we're not perfect.
Yeah,
right?
exactly right.
There's got to be some room for this stuff.
Yeah.
But I listened to Alan on a podcast recently. I can't remember exactly which one, where he was saying that if you're trying to avoid all of what we on social media call red flags, then who's left out there?
Yeah.
You know, we're giving people, and I get it. If someone has major red flags, like if someone is clearly abusive,
right,
or clearly has extreme behavior that could be harmful to you, to themselves, well then yes, of course, you try to steer clear of those people. But to think that you are going to find a partner, I know right now there are a lot of people in our age demographic, I'll be 30 next year, I know you're 33, a lot of people in our age demographic feel a pressure to find their person to start living their life with. And whether that pressure is valid or not, you know, I'm enjoying the fruits of having found the person that I love. And so I get the desire. Now, to think that, you know, if Soph held me to an expectation of perfection when she met me, well then I wouldn't have a chance. So, you know, can we talk on this?
Yeah, so Terry Real, who is like one of my favorite, I think he's a marriage counselor, relationship therapist. You know Esther Perel? Esther
Yes,
Perel's work.
yep.
So like they're good friends. He says that, I think he says, confidence is the ability to see yourself as a flawed individual but still hold yourself in high regard.
I love that. I've heard Esther share that before.
Banger. Because,
Can you repeat that?
yeah, confidence is the ability, or self-esteem, confidence is the ability to see yourself as a flawed individual in this world and still hold yourself in high regard. Because there is no glory in pretending everything's all okay. People want to help others. People want to grow together. And the fear of, you know, finding someone that's only green flags. I have clients and friends that have found the green flag person and they're bored. You know, like, what does Dostoevsky say? Like, if we had, you know, if man had everything he needed and all his woes were to, you know, sit and eat cake for the rest of time, he would light something on fire just to watch it burn. Like, we need something to push against, and expecting that your partner is, you're not looking for someone to be perfect, you're looking for someone to be flawed with you. And that's pride. You know, pride is the idea that I have to be perfect before I can act. But not only will you be waiting forever, but there is no reward in playing perfect. You know, we all wear a mask in our lives at one point or another. But how we show up in relation to someone else is defined precisely by the scars that we wear and how we choose to handle them, rather than being the prettiest, most well-organized individual in the room. People see right through it, man.
A little personal lesson of mine has been that a bad day for the ego can be a great day for the soul.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
when because of life circumstances or your own mistakes, you reveal yourself as a flawed individual, and the people who love you, who are there for you, are still there by your side, recognizing that, hey, you're not always going to be perfect, that there are some things in your life that are uncontrollable, but here we are, and here you are, and you can still be proud of you.
The definition of a friend.
It's great for the soul.
Yeah, dude, it's healing. It's healing. It's more healing to be that, to be real. You know, I think the definition of a friend is someone who doesn't scold you when you fuck up and who sings in your wins like they're your own, like they are their own. And the goal is not to be perfect. It shouldn't be to be perfect. It should be to be flawed amongst people who don't judge you for being flawed.
You're living in this generation, same generation as me, so you can't speak to ones of past, but I wonder, in your work and your study, is there any research to suggest that friendship has changed? The way we experience them?
I haven't read a lot of research on the topic, but I do know that young people today are yearning for in real life connection. So one of the things that, what you find is, like, say like the, like in relation to the social media ban type of stuff and removal of phones from schools, the fear, the underlying fear from kids is not so much that they won't be okay without the phone. It's that it's FOMO. But what you find is that once about a third of the classroom agree with having no phones, the kids love it. So it's really like an in-group, out-group type of thing. So
Interesting.
people fully admit young kids fully admit that they spend too much time on their phones or too much time on screens, and that they wish they had more time together and opportunities and face-to-face experiences in third spaces and parks. And, you know, kids want to be kids, but they also don't want to miss out. So once a certain proportion of the cohort agrees to this being done, everyone actually moves in that direction. There's probably people on the extremes that don't want to do without it at all, but I don't know necessarily with friendship. I know, like take the run club that we started as friends, right? Like, people were just yearning after COVID, you know, it's just 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, just yearning for in real life interactions. We just have a hunger for real experiences to butt against, you know.
Can I ask you how you are as a friend?
How am I as a friend?
Yeah.
I'm the same person everywhere. And I don't know why it gets me emotional saying that. I mean, we have different levels of energy, you know, like I have different levels of energy at a certain time of the day, but the best part about my job is that I get to be the same person here as I am with someone else, and that can be helpful to someone. I think for so many years, I was the extroverted kid that wanted to be liked, and everybody knew I wanted to be liked. And when kids know you want to be liked, like, that's just a recipe for disaster. And, you know, I probably gave as good as I got in many respects, but I always wanted to be on the inside without being asked. And I just would do anything. I would have done anything to be in, you know. And now, I mean, as you grow up, you realize that, like, it's not about being in or out. It's about just, like, being you and people choosing to be a part of that or not.
I mentioned this to Soph yesterday. So I got a call from the owner of the company that I work for. I call him my boss. He's technically not my boss. He'll laugh if he hears this. You know, because I'm a contractor, but, you know, I see him as a boss, a mentor figure in my space. He's a great man. And he called me in a panic because he could see on his house cameras, he was playing around a golf, dog had gotten out. And I lived just up the street from him. So I sprinted down, run around the neighborhood looking for his dog. Thankfully, the dog was returned home safe. But out on my search, I was bumping into people, and I'm like, this dog could have gone anywhere. So I'm just asking random strangers on the street, have you seen a fluffy dog? I can't even remember what color this dog is because he's got 3.
Right.
I'm like, oh, is it the darker one? Is it the lighter one? I don't know.
Yeah.
And this gal that I bumped into with her family was like, oh, I recognize you. We're mates on Facebook. I've, you know, known of you for a long time. And I recognized her too. And I remember her being somebody that was really a part of an in-group. Didn't go to my school. I went to quite a small school, a school in which there were, you know, maybe 30 kids in our year. And so we didn't really have in and out groups. We had kind of a group of us guys who loved our sport and played footy and roughing each other up every lunchtime and loved to laugh. We had the kids who were maybe more, we were all academically inclined as well, but the kids who liked, we'd identify as like the nerdier style of things, like wanted to be on the computers at lunch, playing chess, etc., which just wasn't our jam. And we all got on and respected each other, but there were kind of two camps that had the different interests. Yeah. So we didn't really have what I'd identify as in or out groups at school from my experience. But certainly going to a smaller school, you knew of kids from other bigger schools in the area that were like really a part of the in-groups, and like they had the parties on the weekend and they were always invited to things that I was a bit of a an unknown because I didn't have a lot of those interests. The party wasn't my scene. But you kind of had this longing to want to be recognised by the people who are in the in-groups.
Of course.
Part of being a kid. And I seen this girl yesterday who looks to have a beautiful family of her own. And I remember recognising she was quite a popular person. And I thought, isn't it funny how we get down the line and our lives just become our lives? She's not thinking about how popular she was or wasn't at school. I'm not thinking about that. She's got a beautiful family of her own. I've got my beautiful wife and my amazing friends and this great life that I've created for me with all these things that I enjoy and am excited about. All of that seems so insignificant now. I wish we had only known.
At the time, it felt real though, didn't it?
Yeah. You just wish that you only knew that then. And it didn't cause me a lot of headache. But I think that hindsight would empower people to make choices for them?
Yeah, it's the rare child who trusts their own gut, you know.
Mm.
It's just, we're so susceptible to social and peer influence at, you know, from 5 onwards. That's why I think it's so important to encourage kids to be enthusiastic about the things that inspire them, you know, the things that rev them up, and not to force feed them things that they don't, you know, that you want to instill a genuine curiosity in them. And the problem with school is we don't teach kids how to think, we teach kids what to think. This is important. And they're like, I don't care about Pythagoras. Some kids love Pythagoras and they go on to become engineers, you know, and whatever it is, like they love maths, they love numbers, but we force feed them all of these things and we kind of whittle away the curiosity. It's so interesting that this person, obviously you probably haven't thought about her
No.
or at all.
No, I didn't really recognize her until she said her name. I recognized her name because we've grown up so much. It's probably 12 years since I thought about this person.
But it's so funny because the image of you in her head and the image of her in your head would be very different things.
Yeah.
Like there is a version of you that exists differentially within everybody you've ever met.
For sure.
So
and I want to preface that her life looks amazing now. Like there were young kids in a pram, and I'm like, oh, you know, they're all things that I'm really excited about. So it's not to say that like she became unpopular or anything like that. This is definitely, there's no shade in what I'm saying. It's just recognizing that my life has grown a whole lot since then too.
I mean, yeah, it's nice that someone that you felt kind of, I mean, on the outside with, but you know what I mean? Popular, not popular. It's nice that you can look at her life now and still be inspired by some of the things that she's experiencing.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, I think I've never been able to hold a grudge. It's just not in not in my nature, man. Like I've been through some horrendous experiences with people, and you know, as long as accountability is taken and hands are shaken at the end of it, you're just like onwards and upwards. But some people that I know, dude, they are viscerally hooked by the experiences of the past, and I'm like, dude, you gotta. It's nice that you can look at one of the kids who I didn't get on with the most at school was part of the jockey group, and shout out Andrew, my boy. We hated each other at school, like genuinely. Like I was the, you know, fat kid at school, copped it, and I get dished it out too. Don't get me wrong, but I really wanted to be liked, and you know, he was not a great individual, as a lot of the other boys at the school weren't a great individual to me, and I wasn't in other ways too. But we hadn't seen each other for years, and I was working in a restaurant, and he came in and was like, "Oh, I remember you from school," and I thought, "Fuck this guy." Hate him, you know, like he was a dick at school, yada, yada, yada. I was like 21. And he sent me a message like after we'd run into each other a couple of times and he said, like, "Do you get dinner?" I thought, yeah, I'm going to get a free dinner out of it. It's going to take me to a nice place, have a conversation about this. I knew a bit about him. And I thought, like, you know, I was like, screw this guy or whatever. Like, he was a dick. I'm going to tell him exactly how it was. No holds barred. And I went in there and he was like, dude, I just want to apologize for like how I treated you at school. I wasn't myself. And he was doing it like a life 360, like a life bio when you like talk to people about people that didn't like you, people that did like you, people that knew well, people that didn't know you, to form an understanding of, you know, flaws and foibles and strengths and weaknesses. And he just owned all of it. And I remember thinking, bloody hell, like, if that isn't the measure of a man, I don't know what is. You know, like just owning all of it. Apologies, went to Fred's, you know, bought a really nice dinner, a really nice lunch, and just said, can I ask you some questions? Like, I'd really appreciate it. You can say no, you can leave at any time. I just want to let you know that I'm not, you know, I'm becoming a new person, and I'd really appreciate your support in that. I thought, and now we built a company together, built a startup together, like someone who would have sat at the end of the, like at high school, I could push you off a bridge if I had an option, and now I'm like building a business with him, like we were. And
what's the Adam Sandler movie where he's going back and calling everybody who he's wronged in the past, and there's that guy sitting at home. I think it's Click. The guy's sitting at home with the sniper beside him, and he crosses out his name off a list.
Yeah, like I think when he's got the remote control and he can like.
That's a great mate. That is a
dude, and he's
emotional movie.
He pauses David Hasselhoff and then stands on the desk and like smacks him across the face 8 or 9 times, and then hits play, and the guy's like, "Whoa!" Like he's just like got out all his frustration on this guy.
So good.
Yeah, and it was I mean, a bit of a tangent, but like it's so funny that like if you just let your guard down, you realize that you can probably learn from anybody.
Let's rewind the tape a bit. Where'd you grow up?
Grew up in Clara, North Shore.
Okay.
Yeah, really, really lucky to grow up in that area. Really loving family.
Siblings?
Younger sister, 2.5 years younger than me.
Same as me.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
You close?
Very. We live
Yeah.
together.
No
Yeah.
way.
So Soph and I live with my sister and her partner. We're all very close, yeah.
That's so lovely. Yeah, my sister and I aren't, and we've never been, probably due to my own misgivings. And definitely due to my own misgivings, actually.
What do you mean by that?
I was an angry kid. I was a really angry kid. I am yet to make amends for all of the people that I've hurt and had hurt. And yeah, one of them was my sister and my parents, like I was just, not because I had intent to be malicious. I was just an angry kid copying it on many fronts. I didn't feel safe at home. Not that it was an unsafe environment. I just didn't feel safe. I didn't have the words to communicate my frustration. What do? You lash out. You're just like, I hate this. I hate all of it. I used to dread going to school. Like really used to dread going to school, but you have to, So yeah, I had some really bad experiences, and I didn't realize until, I was pretty heavily bullied, but I think everyone gets bullied. It's just about how much you internalize it. And I was driving to a wedding with my dad at like 27, one of my cousin's weddings, and we were in the car for 3 hours. And I don't know how it came up. We were talking about, you have that once in a blue moon conversation where there are no walls up. And my dad had no idea that I had been bullied at school. And here I am thinking, like, this is about the people's perception of you, right? Like, you assume that people see you in the way that you see yourself. And he's like, I had no idea. And I'm like, well, it wasn't your fault. Like, why do you think I was so angry? He's like, I don't know. I just thought it was us. And I'm like, it wasn't you. It was just everything else. And it was just like this realization that he had blamed himself in many ways, and my mum had blamed herself, but it was other people. It was the school environment. It was the kids. It was the social circle. It was the peer influence. And I was just a kid that didn't have the words to express his frustration. I was very angry at the world. Yeah.
How did that change your relationship with your dad, that conversation?
Look, if I grow up to be half the man that my dad is, that will forever be my greatest achievement.
I've heard you speak very highly of him on another podcast. What is it about his character, his values, that make you so proud of who he is as a man?
I've never heard my dad say a bad word about anyone. And about 25 years ago, longer now, but 30 years ago almost, my dad started a charity called the Annual Stockbrokers Foundation. He's a stockbroker. And he thought the industry was making, I might be getting this story wrong, but he thought the industry was making too much money. So him and 4 friends, when they were like 25, did this thing where like everyone traded for a day, and 1% of those trading funds or the profit went to help children's charities.
Wow.
Predominantly children's charities. And they've raised, tens of millions of dollars for kids' charities over the last 25 years.
That's really cool.
And I just you think that's a thing that Dad does. You just don't really think anything of it. And then maybe like 5 years ago, it was the 25th anniversary. And my dad stands up every year and he gives out his awards, and everyone makes fun of the way that he clears his throat and all of these kind of nuances. And, people, there's biddings and what do you call auctions and, all those things, silent auctions or whatever. And he got up to give this award to someone that had just, raised the most money or made the greatest contributions to the charity and the industry that year. And my mum and my sister and I were like in the crowd. And he got up, he gave the award up, and then everybody stood up and gave it back to him for 25 years of service.
Yeah, wow.
And someone came up and they had done the maths, and it was a slideshow, and they said that they had estimated that he had worked the equivalent of a second full-time job for 25 years and told nobody. And like the veil fell from my eyes. Every negative thing I had ever said to him or about him just fell away in a moment. You're thinking like, fuck, service, to be in the service of others. Comes home from work, does 2 hours on it. And it's the only charity in Australia, I think, that runs on like 1% profit. So they pay for an accountant and insurance. Everything else goes to the kids.
That's really special.
It's incredible. And my mum is the same. My mum is incredibly giving. My sister's incredibly giving. Like I'm very proud of my family. They're beautiful people. But my dad has just been he's the silent assassin of care, you know.
To be a principled person, something to strive for, right?
Yeah, like
really the only thing to strive for.
Yeah, yeah. Like I suppose the only thing that matters is like, what do they say? It's like not reputation is how others see you, but character is how you see yourself. Never heard him bat an eyelid about gloating or. He's the most humble man in the world. All my friends say it. You know, my girlfriends and guy friends that have met him, they're just like, God, he's a good dude. I'm like, yeah. And I just took that for granted, you know. And my sister has got many of his beautiful qualities, and my mum supported him every minute of the way. But at the time when you're an angry kid, you know, you just like, you forget all of that. It doesn't matter. You get to a certain age and you realize, God, I'm just going to forgive my parents for absolutely everything, and I'm going to take responsibility for all of it. And that's adulthood.
2 notes I want to ask you about there. I find it incredibly moving as someone who has made a lot of noise trying to raise money for charity, the idea of not needing to say too much about it, being so driven by the value of doing good that you don't need to beat your own chest. I think that is very aspirational. I think that quality is a little bit lost in the modern world. And one of my theories about this is I think about social media. And I see 3 things playing out on social media. One is it's engineered in a way that has caught our attention and stolen it. And it's designed so well that we have a big fight up against us to win our own attention back. The second thing is we are trying so hard to be received by other people and celebrated by other people that we've become so self-obsessed about how we present ourselves on the platform. The other thing is we are so involved in other people's lives that we have lost touch with what's actually happening in our real lives.
Are we so involved with other people's lives? Or are we just watching from afar?
Yeah, we're so we're paying a lot of attention to other people's lives.
We're in the grandstands.
Yeah.
Critiquing from afar.
And I wonder, is this making us self-obsessed?
Yeah, there is some research by Jade Twangy, who focuses on narcissism that and it kind of depends on how you measure it. You can use like a narcissistic personality inventory, which I think is usually the gold standard for this. It's like I think it's 17 items or 19 items. And I think narcissism is on the rise. And if you look at graphs of when things kind of got really bad from a mental health perspective, especially for young girls, but young boys have caught up. It's pretty much the year that the iPhone came out with the front-facing camera.
This is in a lot of Jonathan Haidt's work, right? Anxious Generation.
And he has on his website, he has a running document, which if anybody is a data nerd like me, I wrote a thesis on a very similar topic. Both my theses were actually on the similar topic because I was so inspired by his work. And he has a an ongoing open document where he shows like points for this hypothesis, points against this hypothesis, neutral points. And it's just like, it's like 1,000 pages. Each document, it's like, maybe it's on the glorification of mental illness, or maybe it's on the relationship between social media use and negative mental health outcomes. But you can see all of his working out, back at school when he had working out piece of paper, it's all there. So if you're a data nerd, cool. Yeah, it's incredible. He's got some, and I used one of these graphs in my thesis about like everything was kind of fine and anxiety and depression were kind of stagnant until we hit a point where it was just like, I am aware that others are watching me and I need to curate that. And like you say about friends, kind of watching, we're not involved. We're not more involved in people's lives. We know more about other people, but we are actually more detached.
What does Matthew McConaughey say? More impressed, less involved.
Is that what he says?
Yeah.
He's great.
He's so good.
He's
one of those guys. He's like a Dwayne, right? Like,
love him. Inherent
wisdom that is only obtained by living your life.
And self-reflective practice.
Yes.
Because he's got he's got like a chest of journals. You know, he's been writing since he was, when we talk about is it Green Lights? Is that his book?
Yeah, so good.
Great book.
Read it a couple times.
It's such a good book. And he's like, yeah, he's so poetic. He's so authentically himself. He doesn't give a shit about who he want. Yeah, I'm sure he used to be, but yeah, that story about how he asked his like hyper masculine father for permission to become an actor is such a beautiful story.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
It's just like a total moment of vulnerability where you could have been smacked in the mouth and the outcome just happened to swing your way.
I find the arc of his story for me is really when he loses his dad. I find him to be Matthew McConaughey's kind of the teenage bloke that we all wanted to be, right? You know, like
Quarterback, gorgeous.
Yeah, good looking unit.
Yeah.
Some nice locks.
Long hair.
Good skin.
Yep.
Got the truck.
Yep.
You know, what does he say? Taking the girls mud in the truck. Like,
yeah, dude, ladies man.
Yeah, real ladies man. Like we all wanted to be that growing up. I certainly wasn't. I struggled really bad with cystic acne.
Yeah.
I was not a ladies man.
Yeah.
But I look at that guy and I think that story of asking his father for permission, which is so beautiful, but then losing his father and recognizing that I can't ask people for permission the rest of my life. I'm my old man now. I think that lesson is a really, really challenging lesson to learn. When to stop asking for permission and granting it to yourself.
It's all just reassurance seeking. They're all safety behaviors.
I wonder how much of it too is the potential need to pass the buck. To say, well, you know, you told me that this was a good idea and it failed. So it's not just me in this.
This is what I say about advice. The problem with advice, and people come to me all the time, say, I need advice on this thing, coffees and whatever. I say, I don't want to give you advice. And they're like, why? I said, because I give you really good advice and it works. You didn't earn that. I won that for you. And if I give you bad advice and it doesn't work, it's my fault. So you try not to give advice in therapy. You want to lead a horse to water, you know. And there's something about the approval of the father dynamic is so incredibly deeply ingrained in us as men and young girls too, but I think more so with men. You know, young boys do demonstrably worse without a father than young girls do. It's really...
That's actually scary. I heard some of these statistics the other day. I think, is it, 50% more likely to be incarcerated.
I think 7 in 10 people in prison grew up in fatherless homes.
Pretty significant.
Incredible. I think the same thing. I remember reading I can't remember where I got this from, but the guy did an analysis of, I think it was like Al Qaeda or the Taliban.
Yep.
And around the same statistic. That like they would grow up in fatherless homes and they were looking for a sense of male infused direction and guidance.
Very interesting.
Yeah. It is a really bleak topic.
I think that there was another statistic that like 1 in 3 fatherless men have some kind of substance abuse or addiction.
Yeah.
I could be wrong there, but I heard that the other day on a pretty reputable source. And I thought it's fascinating that this, I think for men, especially now on social media, because like it or not, we've spoken a lot today about trying to get off it and get away from it. You know, we're still going to be involved in this thing for a very long time, maybe forever. And I know do you speak to a lot of kids in your practice?
Yeah. I work with kids from as young as 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Oldest client's probably 60.
Well, I know that there's a lot of talk around the social media ban, which I think was enforced today.
Really?
I could be wrong, because I seen a message pop up today when I entered TikTok.
Oh, right.
Why I was entering TikTok at 8 o'clock this morning is, there's no reason. But
what do you think about it?
I think I'm in support of giving kids an opportunity to be kids and encouraging them to connect with real life and get a greater sense of their self before a phone tells them who they should be or how they should feel about themselves. I guess the one criticism that I agree with is that it's only banning accounts. Like you can still go on TikTok and scroll for 4 hours without an account.
Right.
That's how most people started on TikTok, right?
Yeah, before
It's
you had an
like you
account.
just got the app and opened it up, and the For You page was going to start working and building a memory and an algorithm anyways based off your operations. So I wonder how effective it will be if we can't actually ban the access to it.
Yeah. I I haven't read enough about it. I know that they
Yeah.
don't have a plan about after banning it. Like I think is it Millie Rose Bannister? Shout out We Are Kind. All Kind. They're doing it's a mental health charity. They do like mental health training. And I think she said that there really isn't a plan for the follow up of what's happening next. And prohibition never works. My parents did everything under the sun to get me off playing video games, and let me bloody tell you, I was very good at getting around Wi-Fi blocks, like whatever it was. Like, kids find gaps. This is why when two parents aren't aligned, kids will find the space between it. They're like water. Dad said this, mum said this. It's middle ground, but it's they find the gaps, and they always will. So blackout banning something like this is not going to work. There's an infinite number of ways that kids are going to get around it, and it also doesn't address the question, I think, of like, I mean, there needs to be an education piece here, massive education piece. And the kids are smart. Like, I think it's swinging back. Kids talk to kids and they kind of know the detrimental effects of it. They're not dumb.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't read a lot about the ban in and of itself. I do like letting kids be kids. Yeah, like we need. Lenore Sklanese wrote a book called Free Range Kids, and like free play, unsupervised free play is one of the best predictors of like well-being outcomes for young kids. Is like allowed because, and this is why I have kids in COVID that are just like they're emotionally and relationally debilitated by that time, not interacting with other people. The COVID babies have really been hit massively, and there's really research on like the reduced financial output. It's probably a pretty big stretch of a model, but. If I'm in a playground with you and there's no teacher around and you smack me, I've got to figure out like, do I want to be friends with you anymore? Do I hit you back?
Yeah.
Do I want to be the type of person that comes back? What do I do here? Like it's all these immediate problem solving and relational problem solving skills that only happen in the moment of, acute learning and stress. Whereas now, when everybody is supervised 24/7 and there's cameras and, nothing, there's no unsupervised free play, it goes from you and me having it out and figuring out what is the best way forward here and negotiating and agreeing upon like how this is going to be worked out or conflict resolution skills to like, how do I convince the teacher that I'm right? You know what I mean? So then that's not problem solving. That's he who cries the loudest and screams to the parents gets the best outcome, really. Or who has the most invasive parents gets the best outcome. And realistically, we need to get kids back. And we need to facilitate spaces where kids get to do this. Like she talks about in the book of a school in New Zealand where there's like 2x4 and hammers and wrenches and kids can like build things and like they smack, you smack your hand with a hammer once and you realize, God, I shouldn't have smacked my hand with a hammer. Like, but we nerfed the world. We've nerfed, and what does he say? Jonathan Haidt says we've overprotected kids in the real world and we've underprotected them online.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me. I think that the only way we solve it long term is when our lives off the platforms become more interesting than our lives on them.
Very much so.
And I remember the days. This makes me sound like a fucking dinosaur. I remember the days when you could scroll to the end of Instagram. Like where you're like, there's nothing new on your newsfeed.
Yeah,
that is the end of the newsfeed.
That was a thing, right?
And you're like, I kind of long for the end of the newsfeed.
I totally forgot that was a thing. It says like you're up to date.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. That was crazy. That was
crazy. But I think it was valuable because it was like, all right, I've seen what I wanted to see from my mates.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go out there and live my life now.
So strange.
It's so funny. We both liked a post on social recently. I seen your name pop up next to mine. And I saved it because there was something about it that was like magnetic to me. Like I couldn't take my eyes off it.
Yeah.
But it was basically this guy, and the caption across the top of the video was like, how's the job search going? And his face is just like frozen in awe. He's got this cowboy hat on. It's like taking a selfie style, and he's like frozen in awe, like just looking at this beautiful mountain range.
Yeah,
and
the camera
colours
pans.
of sunset. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, there's something about that video that was like magnetic. Just this beautiful natural landscape. This reminder that there is this whole world out there that is so much more beautiful than anything you will ever experience on your phone.
Yeah.
If you just choose to look up.
There's this, to take this to the extreme, there's that meme that's like the children yearn for the minds. You know, like there's like just such a ridiculous meme, but like, it's like, I remember watching Yellowstone.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had been in nature after watching it. Like, I'm a huge camper, big four-wheel drive, like not four-wheel drive, but like lots of camping, heaps of outdoor rock climbing over the years, been overseas I love the outdoors. I've just been inhibited by, studying and the thesis and all of that. But I remember like going into the mountains, into the mountains a lot. Every second weekend I'd go camping in the Blue Mountains and go rock climbing with my friends. And you just go out there and it's like you just like in the Matrix when they just unplug the thing from the back of your neck.
Yeah.
I'm sitting by a campfire, I'm just like, like there is nothing in my head.
Yeah.
And you can't, it's like, why do we have shower thoughts? It's probably the only minute of the day when we're not being stimulated.
Absolutely.
And that's the default mode network in the brain we just need. It's like the ambient signal, and we just don't have time for that.
Have you heard about that new film, Train Dreams?
No.
With Joel Edgerton,
No.
Aussie actor. And people are saying it's like so utterly beautiful, the way that it's shot and the scenery, that it's breathtaking, that you just feel like you're watching something beautiful. And I think it's because we are so trained in this way in which we just get thing after thing after thing after thing, that we're never really focused on anything. And there's a reason that everything is designed that way now. I think there's a rule with anything that's created by Netflix that it has to, every 7 minutes has to have some kind of climatic cliffhanger in an episode or a show to keep you interested. And
I hate that.
Yeah, I really made it one of the greatest tests of self-constraint for me has been with this podcast, keeping the integrity that the conversation is the sacred thing, that what I see play out consistently, and this is not me calling anyone out or pointing my finger, but a consistent theme in media and the podcast space is, here's this really troubling thing that we're talking about culturally, socially, in the news, politically. Let's just have that conversation with every guest and get real clickbait material in clips.
I love Stephen Bartlett, but though I don't listen to them because of the titles.
Yeah.
Like I love his guests. I think he's really great. But like 5 signs you might have cancer now. I'm like, brother, I'm so interested in that conversation with that doctor. And maybe it's just, you're appealing to the masses, but like, and that guy's a genius, but I hate it. I don't want that. I know exactly. It's like the algorithm. Like my algorithm is, I'm making videos now and I'm like learning how to do this, and I might buy a camera and it's still, and every bloody video on my algorithm is telling me like, you need a 3-second audio hook and you need a visual hook and you need to snap, otherwise you're going to lose them, and the cliffs, it's going to look like this on your graph. And everyone told me, everyone that I looked at, every creator that I followed that's done big things said like, you need to play your own little part in the degradation of the attention economy. And I just didn't want to do it. And don't get me wrong, I've tried it out and things, but it hasn't really been my cup of tea. And I hate when I know I've been hijacked.
Yeah. When you feel like there's a lack of substance in something, for me, you lose the trust.
Yeah, and like you feel cheated. Like I want value. I want to that's why storytelling I think is so big right now. People yearning for the campfire stories that go on for 3 minutes.
And I don't mind if you clickbait me with a great story.
Yeah, right.
If you clickbait me with a great story, I'm like, oh, really interesting. I'm excited to learn more about that person. But if you clickbait me with fear, I'm like, oh, you've lost me.
Right. Yeah, if there was enough fear in the world, right?
Absolutely.
You got enough of it already.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't need enough things to stress
give
about.
me more of this stuff. Yeah, there's this. We're all becoming increasingly more aware that we are living in different worlds. I think the lesson of this decade really is that like our worldview is so entirely different. We're just being force-fed things that, one of the conversation with a friend about, everybody thinks they're a critical thinker. Everybody loves to think that they think critically about things. I was having a conversation with a friend, and my sister asked this great question. She said, who on the other side of the aisle from you do you see as intelligent and in high regard? And like, you should be able to answer that. If you're a critical thinker, take anything, any controversial, the Charlie Kirk thing or anything, any controversial topic at the moment, and you think, who do you look to on the other side of the aisle and think, gosh, I don't agree with anything they're saying or a lot of what they're saying, but gosh, they do it well and I can see their points, but I don't agree with them. And most people couldn't do that at all.
No. I think the other great test is being able to look at people who have opposing views to you and still hold a level of respect for their opinion.
Have you do this? Try to do this? It's hard. It is so hard watching someone who has demonstrably different views from you, because you're like, you're an idiot, you know what you're talking about, this confirmation bias that just sits in the back. Like, it's really difficult.
I think what's really important to mention though is that we are constantly seeing, in most cases on social media and news, the extreme sides of both arguments, as opposed to the 70, 80, potentially even 90% of people who are potentially in opposition, but over very minor things.
Right. So I found this out by accident because I don't follow Australian politics at all. And we had an election. Was it last year we voted? National election? Right. Yeah. I wouldn't know.
Or this year.
Was it this year?
Maybe it was this year. I think it was March this year.
I have no idea. Right. Just voted in. It shows my level of knowledge of Australian politics. It's not my domain. But I was so, you have family dinners and you talk about things. And my family is we've been encouraged from a young age to sit with the adults. So from a young age, it was just like talk. There's no kids table.
Yep.
Say something. You got to say a few things. Talk about what's your opinion on this when you're like 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. And so we have all these debates about all these different things. We have disagreements. We hug when we leave, and I'm like, I have no bloody idea who to vote for. Like, I know I'm not on either ends of the extreme, right? But I have no bloody idea who to vote for. So I did that political compass thing. When you go to the ABC website and it like tells you, well, you do your checklist. Like, what do you think about immigration or whatever? And I was smack bang in the middle. I was like the most sense. Right. Okay. Right. This is good. So I did this. And then I was like, we're at coffee or something, or it's like after Run Club and we're talking about it's coming up. What are you going to vote for? Like, you're not meant to talk about politics at the dinner table, but, we do. And I said, I did this political compass thing. And like, I think over the course of the 2 weeks before the election, like 20 people, 10, maybe 15 or 20 people that I'd asked, they were like, I did the political compass thing too. I'm like, what happened? They're like, I'm in the bloody middle. I'm like, no one told me that they were on the ends. But the narrative that I'm being fed is that everyone is on the extremes. I thought there wasn't one person that told me that they were dead hard Labor, dead hard Liberal, whatever, like, what's her name? Pauline Hanson. Like, there was no one that told me that they were all in on that. And I'm like, wow, we're being force-fed this lie that the well-organized and loud people at the extreme ends of the spectrum are the majority.
Well, and I think if you're I'm sure there is an exception to this rule, but I think if you are very honest with yourself, even if you think you're all in on someone, you're just all in on the idea that they have that resonates with the biggest problem you think you have.
Right.
So if your biggest problem is, if you're really stressed about housing affordability, whoever has what you deem to be the best housing policy will be the thing that seems to, and you're like, oh, mate, everything that person says, everything that Steve Berger says, I'm all for Steve Berger.
Right.
This is a fictional character.
Well, he aligns most with the outcome I want.
Correct. Right. But you might not know that there's 10 other things that you disagree with Steve Berger on, but you're laser focused on that one thing because you feel like it's the most important. And sometimes that's fine.
Yeah.
Right? I think that the problem is, this is my problem with I guess, our generation of social voices who are telling people what they should think about politically, is they want you to critically think. That's what they're encouraging you to do, but they will scrutinize you if you don't critically think the same way that they do.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that is very unhealthy, because what you're trying to tell people is you should actually go and do your own research, but I hope your research is the same as mine.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
I'm
there's
open-minded as long
consequences.
as you end up at the same conclusions as
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
You know, we've got to have more
Yeah.
grace for each other. I think provided that your opinion is not to inflict any kind of harm or suffering on other people, we have to be able to go, hey, you're not going to see eye to eye with me. I don't see eye to eye with everyone in my life on these issues.
And that's what makes life rich.
That's why we're humans.
For sure.
For all the same reasons that I might be stressing about a health problem that I don't have an answer to, or, you know, you might be thinking about how you were in childhood or the things that you couldn't solve or, you know, seem to not have a grasp of, is the same thing that's going to make you politically imperfect.
And like this idea that you know, there are no normal people.
No.
If I've learned anything in my time working with people, it's that the only normal people and the only normal families are the ones that you don't know very well. And we take a small segment of an individual. I'll give you a really great example. I'm a huge Jordan Peterson fan until he lost the plot. Like, I just think he kind of went off the rails a little bit. But, you know, when I was in 2016, when he was a professor and I was a lost idiot causing trouble and probably lighting bins on fire or whatever, like, there was a message of his that spoke to me. And I think that you can separate the art from the artist. But sometimes, one time I put a story up about, like, what are the top 10 books? Someone asked me, what are the top 10 books that you would recommend for an individual, you know? And his was like number 3, 12 Rules for Life. Fantastic book. The ones after that, I think, fell off a cliff and he became not necessarily a nice person in many ways. And he kind of he had foregone his duty of care as a clinical psychologist, which is do no harm. And I think he's kind of fallen off that wagon. But I just got torn apart for even promoting a book by a misogynistic transphobe. And I was like, can you separate the art from the artist? You know, like...
Not a lot of people can.
No, why not? Like, because you're putting money in his pocket. I'm like, right. What if that book illuminates a part of you that makes 50% of your life better? Yeah. Is it worth it?
Well, people are making a judgment call that everyone that they idolise now won't potentially come into conflict with them later on. You know, like we're pigeonholing people to suggest that we'll always see eye to eye with them.
Say more.
So my problem with a lot of the rhetoric today is that just because you agree with someone today doesn't necessarily mean that you will agree with them tomorrow. And that's okay. That
was the problem of cancel culture, right?
Absolutely.
What does it take to come back from a mistake?
And the problem is, if everybody on social media who is so loud and proud about different issues, which is great, be loud and proud about the issues that you want to champion, wants the world to change, you have to give people grace. If you don't give people grace, if you brand them as wrong or cancelled or no longer fit to exist in culture, you are suggesting that they are unhelpable. Whether or not they're wrong, right? You're suggesting that we outcast them from society. Now, I don't know about you, but it's pretty hard to outcast someone from society. So one thing that I've really struggled with the idea of coming to terms with is, one thing I hate more than anything is domestic violence. I really struggle to wrap my head around how somebody can do that, right? How somebody can hurt somebody in their life that is more vulnerable than them. In most cases, it's someone who's more vulnerable. And then I look at these, usually men who perpetrate that kind of violence, and I go, fuck, like there is no place for you in the world. But then I question, well, if there's no grace for how we can potentially help that person, we are suggesting that they will always be an offender. And we know that in most cases, they won't always be behind bars. So they will always have the opportunity to offend again. And so if we can't potentially change their perspective and allow those people to become functioning, healthy, and positive members of society, then we're suggesting that the problem we have today is a problem we will always be okay with having.
Bang on. I spent a really long time trying to figure out, I've thought about this for months, like what's a kind of simple question where you can kind of get it pretty good. Like when we do like psychometrics, say like an IQ testing, right? There's
Okay.
like many, the idea is to, when we understand intelligence, this is such a tangential way of talking. I'll make it make sense in a second. When you measure something, the reason why we have five senses is because, like, if I see it and I touch it and I hear it, it's probably more true than if I just see it and hear it. You know what I'm saying? So when we have different levels of analysis. And when it comes to measuring things, we want to have as many different items as possible to figure these things out. Domestic violence, right, in a way, I tried to figure out how you could, with as little questions as possible, figure out if someone is an inherently kind of good person or they have good intentions. That's what I was, if I can figure out you're depressed in like a DAS, which is just depression, anxiety, and stress scale, 21 items, it's pretty good. Gives me a pretty good prediction of how you're doing. But I can do a short DAS, which is like 7, like a DAS 7, which is like a third of the items. It's almost as reliable as 21 questions. So I'm like, what question can you ask someone to understand like their perspective on the world in as quick a way as possible? And you're talking about domestic violence, and this is obviously something that is of conflict within you. Like, I couldn't imagine myself doing something like this to someone. But then you pause and you're like, there's probably many variables that have got this man to this stage.
Absolutely.
And the question that I kind of came to was, the height of hubris or the height of ego is believing that if you were dealt the same cards as that person, you would have been better off than them. And I couldn't be a psychologist if I didn't think that way, think contrary to that, because there is nothing worse than thinking, well, if I had every single experience that that gentleman had, I would have chosen to act differently and I would have been more of a man than him. I would have acted forthrightly. Like, you are fucking delusional.
Very righteous of you, right?
Yeah, who are you on your moral high horse,
Yeah.
And the DV thing is, it's appalling. It's appalling, right? Like, the rates are too high. And the conversation needs to be had about why these things are coming about, but from an empathetic perspective, which is what you chose to take, right? Like, some of the most difficult disorders to work with are the personality disorders. So you have clusters. So schizoid, schizotype, schizotypy, avoidant, narcissistic person, not avoidant, dependent, narcissistic, eccentric. So borderline personality disorder is like the odd or eccentric. They're kind of in clusters, A, B, and C. And one of the hardest parts about personality disorders, whether it's narcissism or whether it's borderline, or whether it's avoidant or dependent, is that because they're most of them what you call egosyntonic, which means they align with the self-perception of the person. So people don't see them as doing anything wrong. And it's a really complex batch to work for, because, like, if you don't see yourself as doing anything wrong, why would you want to change? Your perception of the world is right. And I was thinking about borderline personality disorder when you said this. People don't understand why they do things in the world, but we always assume malicious intent. We just assume that that person is a bad person because of the things that they're doing. But you scratch just a little bit below the surface and they realize, well, they don't know, haven't been taught how to act in other ways. That's my point, sorry. One of these ladies in the comments I was talking about borderline personality disorder. It's a very difficult disorder to work with because it's rooted in attachment and fractured attachment relationships and a history of trauma. So you don't know how to attach to people well. So your interpersonal dynamics of interpersonal relationships are they're very hot. The saying for BPD is, I hate you, don't leave me. So you kind of operate in these polarities. And working with individuals like this is really quite hard, because you need to have firm boundaries and these kind of problems, but with these kind of issues. I'm trying to talking about BPD. Oh, like in the DV situation, this lady's therapist said to her, you have this diagnosis of borderline personality disorder or whatever it is, and it makes your behavior understandable, and it does not make it acceptable. So understanding from the perspective that this gentleman is beating his wife because he doesn't have a healthy outlet to vent his rage and frustration and communicate, it's the same as a toddler. The most violent kids in the world are 2-year-olds, statistically speaking, in terms of kicking and hitting and punching and whatever. They're 2 to 3. And then they become socialized and we weed it out of them, most kids. And if they're not, if that doesn't happen by the time they're 5, they have lifelong issues because they develop behind their peers. But you will never be able to convince somebody to change or even begin to have a conversation about convincing someone to change when you see them as inherently broken, and it's a healing thing to hear for someone that doesn't know why they're doing bad things. Like I fully understand that the experiences of your past have allowed you to behave in a way like this, but it doesn't make them okay, and that's on you.
Yeah, absolutely. We need positive lighthouses for people to aspire to be like, to look to change their own ways. It's the only way.
Yeah, it's a huge. I think that's one of the. Is it one of the biggest predictors for kids with fatherlessness or kids that experience fatherless homes, is like finding a mentor, someone to look up to. Like I worked a lot with young kids on the path to delinquency, and it was like, looking back on it now, I mean, you look at it at the time and you think like, gosh, what the hell am I doing here? Like, what am I even, you just question it at the moment. But I realized that there are a lot of people out there that don't see themselves as worthy of living a good life. They don't feel like they deserve a great life. And I spent 6 months teaching kids how to be better, beginning from the assumption that they thought they deserved it. And it didn't go nowhere, but it fell on deaf ears. And then I opened up the floor and I was like, what's the best possible outcome of your life you can imagine? And the kid's just like, I don't know. I could clean pools like my dad. Do you like your dad? No. Want to be like him? No. What else? Don't know. So half the idea is, half of the work is in believing that you are deserving of something more grand than you currently expect of yourself. And I like your perspective on the empathetic side, like the DV side. You're never going to swing someone's mind if you're bullying them for being terrible or broken. The DV stuff is not acceptable, but it's an underlying system. It's sorry to go on the rant, but the same with. Okay. It's the same. They say hurt people hurt people. That's not true. Not really, because if you look at, like, statistically speaking, victims of childhood sexual abuse, of people who sexually, this is something that's a tongue twister, of people who sexually abuse kids, almost all of them were sexually abused as kids. But not all people who were sexually abused as children go on to sexually abuse kids, which means it is the overwhelming majority of people that do not go on to hurt children or commit domestic violence, atrocities and things. There is something in there about the interplay of how it means to act and present yourself in the world in relation to others. And having a role model is a big part of that. Yeah,
so important, man. And I'm a big believer in those things require punishment. As you said, doesn't make them right.
Tell me more.
Well, if you perpetrate that kind of violence, sexually, physically, you deserve to suffer the consequences for that. But in suffering the consequences, how are we then rehabilitating people to come out the other side of it changed?
What if I was to tell you that punishment doesn't work half as well as praise?
Well, then we're in tricky waters, aren't we? Because
it's a complex issue.
It's a really complex issue. I had Gary Jubelin on the podcast a couple times. Gary's a former homicide detective, and he wrote a book. He's written 2 books. His second book, Breaking Badness, is all about how a lot of the prison system doesn't work. We have repeat offenders, or what we call recidivism. And but does that mean that we shouldn't punish people for crimes that are really dangerous, that we shouldn't punish murderers? No, I don't think so. But I do think that we need to think more deeply about how we change the narrative of our life moving forward. I had a great guest on the podcast once, Bruce Bryan, who was wrongfully convicted of murder and spent 29 years behind bars in Sing Sing Correctional Facility. I heard Bruce on Joe Rogan's podcast and reached out to him, and he'd come on, which was amazing.
29 years in prison.
29 years. And I asked Bruce, how were you not so utterly furious that 30 years of your life, the opportunity to have children, the opportunity to create memories and experiences within this period of your life as a young man, how are you not angry that that's been robbed from you? And he spoke about a mentor, a role model that he met in prison very early on, who allowed him to see that the way he was living his life, despite the fact he wasn't guilty of the crime he was prosecuted for.
How old was he when he went in?
I can't remember exactly. It was around mid-20s.
Okay.
And Bruce said, he was living the street life in the lead up to this, but they found, long story short, the prosecutor was bribing witnesses. Ended up going behind bars himself, and Bruce was acquitted. But we were talking about that, and he said, this role model allowed me to see that I could either be better or I could be bitter. And I started studying, I started reading, I started having these conversations that opened my eyes to a new way. And, I found it really fascinating. His story's incredible. Brought me to tears a couple times because it was just so moving.
He who has a why can bear almost anyhow.
Viktor Frankl.
It's actually originally Nietzsche, but yeah, that's where everyone gets it from.
Go.
Yeah, and it's a fucking walloper. And it doesn't have to be that grand. But that is choosing to make the best of a bad situation, the worst situation, robbed arguably for the best years of your life. What do you do with it? What is within your control? Take a stoic approach. How do I play this hand given that it's been dealt? Because I think I'm crying thinking about the bloody story, man. To lose.
It's moving.
It's incredible.
Very moving.
Yeah. Well, most people, especially in the sexiest part of Sydney, don't understand the weight of some people's experiences.
No.
You just couldn't imagine the burden. What's that saying? If everybody threw their problems into a pile, you would be fighting to take yours back.
Yeah.
I can remember a decade ago, I used to love posting quotes on Instagram when I was 15.
I was the same.
I loved it. I used to love a quote. Everyone was like, that's so
Trying to be a
deep.
philosopher.
I look back, there's 4 likes. I'm like, yes. But yeah, some people live immeasurably difficult lives. And you count your lucky stars. There's no bloody way that I would have been as strong as that gentleman.
No, me neither.
There's no way.
It's pretty incredible.
And dude, that is, that Man's Search for Meaning book is the most profound book ever written. It's my most gifted book.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, I read it on a plane going over the Middle East, and my grandfather was a Holocaust survivor.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I had always resented that part of me. It was never something that I was interested in. I read the book. I think it was for the first time, or at least I engaged with the learning at a deeper level for the first time when I was flying over to the Middle East. And I remember just crying endlessly at the idea that somebody could see the light at the end of the tunnel in a situation like this. You've just got married. You finished your life's work in a manuscript. And you're separated from your new wife, and you sew the manuscript of the entirety of your learnings from life into the lining of your jacket, and then they take the jacket from you. And what do? You walk forward with your head up high.
Chin up, chest out, hey?
Chin up, chest out. And you don't pretend it doesn't affect you, But you realize that there are some things within your control. And by God, man. And then I saw my family name in the Holocaust Museum in Yad Vashem, and I was a mess. I was a mess for weeks, thinking that there are people on the face of this earth that I had the hubris to complain about my experience, you know. And you just think like, God, most people these days, they have no idea what human beings have suffered for the entirety of human history. It's mostly terrible, you know.
Yeah, we're living in pretty decent times.
Right.
Especially our lives right here, right now. Man, we're sitting in a podcast studio
Dude.
under a lantern.
Yeah.
Having
Feeling
a
pretty good in an
conversation.
air-conditioned room.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we should all be incredibly grateful. Not saying that it isn't hard. What are you doing to make it better? Because the fact is, most people's excuses are entirely valid. You can't take that away from them. Like, you might be behind the eight ball and you might have had your goods removed from you in a way that was disheartening and unfair. And you might not have been given the step up. And where does that leave you?
Remember that game we used to play at school, Stuck in the Mud?
Is it when you can't move?
Yeah, you get tagged
Yeah.
by the protagonist of the game.
Yeah.
Well, the antagonist of the game, I should say. Yeah. And you basically have to move your arms like an octopus until someone crawls under your legs to set you free.
Yeah, right.
And do you remember the helpless feeling in that game of being stuck in the mud, in air quotations?
Yeah.
And hoping to God that someone would come and save you so that you could be re-involved in the game. I often think about that concept in life. Like, the mud is perceived, it's not real. Like, yeah, it happened to you.
Yeah.
But the beauty of real life is you don't have to wait for someone to save you. You can just keep moving.
What is that beautiful Timothy Chalamet quote? You can be the
master of your fate, you can be the captain of your soul.
Yeah.
But you have to realize that life is coming from you, not at you, and that takes time.
That takes time. It's a banger. And that's it. Like, learning is hard. It's harder if you choose not to learn from it. You know, life is hard, and it's harder for others. And some people choose to use that as a conduit or a vehicle for growth and change, where you can just sit and whinge about it. And now, don't get me wrong, it's my job to listen to people complain about their experiences, and they're totally justified. And there needs to be time for that. There needs to be people need space to process.
Absolutely,
man. Thinking is hard. Holding competing thoughts in mind and then moving forward is not something that we are trained to do. That's why people write. That's why people talk and scream and kick and yell, because they don't know how to formulate something that will lead them in the right direction. That's partly what my job is. But realizing that the knowledge that actually sits within you in many ways it's the lie that we've all not been sold, that we need to seek. There is always, like, I do this thing with clients, like, there is always, if I asked you in a week's time to make your life immeasurably worse, you could come up with an infinite number of things to do that.
Yeah.
You know? What about the other way?
It's harder, isn't it?
It's harder because we think that the outcome will not be worth its weight in salt. That's not true. It's just not. Because if you're not getting out of bed at all, and one day you choose to get out of bed and have a shower, that is 100% better than yesterday. And it's just the ego that says, how fucking pathetic is that I have to celebrate having a shower? And I'm like, shut up. I will be the cheerleader for that. Yeah, you did fucking well. Did the version of you for the last 6 weeks get out of bed and have a shower? No. Right. Pat yourself on the back. What's next? And the people don't aim incrementally low enough. I wish people knew this. Like, I get so many beautiful messages from people. And the first thing I tell them that there is no magic. People the magic is within each of us, but it's
Mm.
different within each of us. And if only you aimed a little bit towards something that you wanted, in 6 months' time, you could be a different person. You know, if you told me at 18 I was going to be a clinical psychologist in X amount of months, I would have spat in your face and smoked another cigarette, you know. And I want everybody to know that there is no magic in any one of us more than others.
Mm.
And there is no end to where you could end up if you trusted your gut and acted accordingly.
That's a beautiful way to end this conversation for today, my friend. I have to love you and leave you. I've
Been
got
a
another
pleasure.
guest.
You got another one?
Yeah,
Good. I'm glad you had back-to-backs. I'm sorry I was late. Couldn't find parking.
mate. This has been a whole heap of fun. I really appreciate your honesty, your insight, and being able to sit here and riff with you, and the free appointment.
Dude, thank you very much for providing a space to chat. I can't believe I get to do this for free.
It's good fun.
It's fucking great, dude. Maybe I need to start a podcast.
You do.
Yeah, just by myself. It's so... You're doing a really great thing.
Thank you, brother.
Service to other people, providing knowledge and wisdom, exploring the depths of other people. What more is there than that, you know?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, my man.
Thank you for having me.
That was great fun.